The night before my son's wedding, he stood in my kitchen and said the words that shattered my heart into 1,000 pieces. "Mom, don't come tomorrow. Amber thinks you'll embarrass us." I stayed home the next day. Alone in the house, I'd worked 3 jobs to keep, but an hour before those vows were supposed to happen, my phone rang. It was Amber, the bride, and she was sobbing so hard I could barely understand her. When I finally made out what she was saying, I realized my son had made the biggest mistake of his life. Hello, dear friends. My name is Diane Foster, and I'm here to share a story that I never thought I'd have to tell. It's about betrayal, heartbreak, and ultimately about the truth coming to light in the most unexpected way. Before I begin, I'd love to know where you're watching from today. Are you joining me from a small town like mine, or perhaps from a bustling city? Drop a comment below and let me know. I find such comfort in knowing I'm not alone in this world, that there are kind souls out there who understand what it means to give everything for your children, only to have it thrown back in your face. Now, let me tell you how I ended up sitting alone in my living room on what should have been one of the happiest days of my life. I raised my son Jason as a single mother. His father walked out when Jason was only 3 years old, left us with a mountain of debt and a mortgage I could barely afford. I was 26 years old, with a little boy who kept asking when Daddy was coming home, and I had to figure out how to keep our world from falling apart. Those early years were brutal. I worked as a waitress at a diner during the day, cleaned offices at night, and took in ironing on the weekends. I wore the same 3 outfits for 2 years straight. My hands were always rough and red from the cleaning chemicals. I cut my own hair in the bathroom mirror. I bought my shoes from thrift stores and resold them myself when they wore through. I was exhausted constantly, sleeping 4 or 5 hours a night, working double shifts, giving Jason the bigger portions at dinner, and eating whatever was left. My body ached. My feet were covered in blisters, but I kept going because Jason was my world. But Jason never went without, not once. He had new shoes every school year. He had the calculator he needed for math class, the proper uniform for Little League, the art supplies for his projects. When he wanted to join the debate team and they needed money for travel, I picked up extra shifts. When he dreamed of going to college, I worked overtime for 3 years to help him avoid crushing student loans. I was so proud of him. My boy, my beautiful boy, who graduated with honors, who got a good job at a marketing firm in the city, who seemed to have escaped the poverty that had defined my entire adult life. He moved into a nice apartment, wore tailored suits, drove a car that didn't break down every other month. He'd made it, and I'd done that. I'd given him that chance. Then, 2 years ago, he met Amber Westfield. I'll never forget the first time Jason brought her home. I'd cleaned the house for 3 days straight, even though it was already clean. I made a roast with all the trimmings, set the table with the good china I'd inherited from my mother, put fresh flowers in a vase. I wanted everything to be perfect. I wanted this girl who'd captured my son's heart to see that we might not have money, but we had love, we had dignity, we had grace. Amber walked into my home wearing a white cashmere sweater that probably cost more than my monthly mortgage payment. Her nails were perfect, professionally done. Her blonde hair was styled in that effortless way that actually takes a salon visit and $200. She looked around my living room with my worn furniture and my outdated wallpaper, and I saw something flicker in her eyes, something cold. She was polite during dinner. I'll give her that. She said the roast was lovely, though I noticed she barely touched it. She asked me questions about my work, and when I told her I'd recently retired from my job at the dry cleaners, I saw her glance at Jason. It was quick, so quick I almost missed it, but it was there, a look that said, "You didn't tell me your mother worked at a dry cleaners." After that first visit, things started to change. Jason's calls became less frequent. When he did call, he seemed rushed, distracted. He stopped coming by for Sunday dinners, our tradition since he was a little boy. He said he was busy with work, with Amber's family events, with wedding planning. Yes, wedding planning. After just 8 months of dating, Jason proposed to Amber and she said yes. I was thrilled. I cried when he told me, happy tears, because my boy was going to be a husband, was going to build a family of his own. I asked when I could help with the wedding planning, offered to contribute what I could. I had some money saved up, not much, but enough to maybe pay for the flowers or help with the catering. Jason got quiet on the phone. Then he said, "Mom, Amber's parents are handling everything. They've got it covered. It's going to be a big wedding, really formal at this exclusive country club. You don't need to worry about any of it." The way he said it made my stomach hurt, like I was a burden to be managed, not the mother of the groom who should be involved in her only child's wedding. Over the next few months, I was kept at arm's length from all the planning. I wasn't invited to look at venues. I wasn't asked to come dress shopping. When I called to ask about colors so I could find something appropriate to wear, Jason said Amber would get back to me on that. She never did. I met Amber's parents exactly once, at an engagement party I almost wasn't invited to. Jason called me 2 days before and said, "Oh, Mom, I forgot to mention there's an engagement party on Saturday. You should come." Like it was an afterthought, like I hadn't given birth to him, raised him, sacrificed everything for him. The party was at the Westfield family's home, and home doesn't even begin to describe it. It was a mansion, a sprawling estate with columns and a chandelier in the entryway that probably cost more than I'd earned in a decade. There were caterers in crisp white uniforms, champagne in crystal flutes, caviar on toast points. I wore my best dress, the navy blue one I'd bought for my mother's funeral 5 years ago. I'd had it dry cleaned and pressed. I thought I looked nice, presentable, but when I walked in and saw the other guests in their designer clothes and expensive jewelry, I felt like a sparrow that had wandered into a gathering of peacocks. Amber's mother, Catherine Westfield, greeted me with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "Oh, you must be Jason's mother. How nice to finally meet you. Jason has told us so much about you." The way she said it, I knew immediately that whatever Jason had told them, it wasn't good. She looked at my dress, my sensible shoes, my department store purse, and I could see her cataloging everything, judging everything, finding everything lacking. "What a lovely home you have," I said, trying to make conversation. "Thank you. We've been here for 20 years. She glanced at me. "Do you own or rent, dear?" The way she said dear was condescending. "I own a small house," I said. "I've been there for 30 years. "How quaint," she said. And then she excused herself without another word. I tried to make conversation with the other guests, but I felt invisible. These were people who summered in the Hamptons, who belonged to yacht clubs, who casually mentioned their vacation homes in Aspen. What was I supposed to contribute? Stories about stretching a food budget or finding a good deal on winter coats? I found Jason in the crowd and pulled him aside. "Honey," I said, "I feel a little out of place here. Everyone is so fancy and I'm just... Mom, just try to blend in, okay?" He cut me off, his voice sharp. "Don't tell any embarrassing stories. Don't talk about money. And for God's sake, don't mention that you used to work at a diner." I felt like he'd slapped me. "Jason, I'm not ashamed of how I supported us. Those jobs put food on our table, kept a roof over our heads, sent you to college." "I know, Mom, I know. But Amber's family doesn't need to hear all that. They don't understand that kind of life. Just try to be normal for one night." Normal. As if my life, my struggles, my sacrifices had been abnormal. As if I was something to be hidden away, swept under the rug like dirt. If you're watching this, and you've ever felt dismissed by someone you loved, if you've ever been made to feel less than, hit that subscribe button, because this story is for you, and you deserve to know you're not alone. I left the engagement party early, claiming a headache. Jason barely noticed when I said goodbye. The months leading up to the wedding were torture. Jason's calls became even more infrequent. When I did hear from him, he was distant, formal, like I was a business acquaintance rather than his mother. I tried to be involved, tried to be excited, but every time I asked about the wedding, I was shut down. "The invitations are being handled," he'd say. "The seating chart is complicated, don't worry about it. Amber has very specific ideas about everything. It's better if we just let her handle it." I didn't even see my invitation until it arrived in my mailbox, the same as everyone else's. A heavy cream envelope with elegant calligraphy. No personal note, no phone call, just a formal invitation to my own son's wedding, like I was some distant relative they were obligated to invite. I called Jason that night. "I got the invitation today, it's beautiful." "Yeah, Amber picked them out, cost a fortune." "Jason, I haven't really gotten to know Amber very well. Maybe she and I could have lunch sometime before the wedding. Just the two of us, get to know each other?" There was a long pause. Then Jason said, "Mom, Amber's really busy with work and wedding planning. I don't think she has time for lunch." But she had time for lunch with her bridesmaids. She had time for spa days with her mother. She had time for dress fittings and cake tastings and flower consultations. She just didn't have time for me. I should have seen it coming. I should have known that something was terribly wrong, but I kept hoping that after the wedding, things would be different. I kept telling myself that Amber was just stressed, that Jason was just overwhelmed, that once they were married and settled, we'd get back to normal. We'd have Sunday dinners again. Jason would call me just to chat. I'd be a grandmother someday, and I'd rock my grandbabies and tell them stories about when their daddy was small. I was so naive. The rehearsal dinner was the night before the wedding. I knew about it, of course, but I wasn't sure if I was actually invited. Jason hadn't mentioned it. I called him 3 days before and asked if I should plan to attend. He hesitated. Actually hesitated before answering. "Yeah, Mom, of course. It's at 7 at the country club. Business casual?" I bought a new outfit for the occasion. It took a chunk out of my modest savings, but I wanted to look nice. I wanted to fit in. I found a pretty rose-colored dress and matching jacket at a department store. Got my hair done at a salon for the first time in years. I looked in the mirror before I left and thought, okay, I look presentable. I look like someone who belongs at her son's rehearsal dinner. I was so wrong. The private dining room at the country club was stunning. Long tables set with china and crystal, candles everywhere, flowers spilling out of huge arrangements. And the people. My God, the people. They looked like they'd stepped out of a magazine. The women in cocktail dresses that probably cost thousands of dollars, the men in suits that were definitely custom-tailored. I found my place card at the very end of one of the tables, tucked in the corner as far from the head table as possible, while still being in the same room. I sat down and tried to make conversation with the people around me, but they were all Amber's family and friends, and they looked at me like I was an intruder. The dinner was endless. Speech after speech from Amber's side of the family, talking about how perfect Jason and Amber were together, how Jason was joining such a wonderful family. Nobody mentioned me, not once. I sat there for 3 hours and it was like I didn't exist. After dinner, Jason came over to my corner of the room. He'd had a few drinks, I could tell. His face was flushed, his tie loosened. "You doing okay, Mom?" he asked, but he didn't really seem to care about the answer. "Jason, honey, can we talk for a minute outside?" He glanced back at Amber, who was laughing with her bridesmaids, then nodded. We walked out to a balcony overlooking the golf course. "Jason," I started, my voice shaking, "I feel like you're pulling away from me. I feel like I've done something wrong, and I don't know what it is. This is your wedding, honey. I should be a part of this. I should feel included, but I feel like I'm just in the way." He didn't look at me. He stared out at the perfectly manicured lawn and said, "Mom, you're not in the way. It's just that Amber's family is different from what we're used to. They have expectations. There are certain ways things are done. And I don't fit into those ways? Is that what you're telling me?" He finally turned to look at me, and I saw something in his eyes I'd never seen before. Shame. He was ashamed of me. "Mom," he said slowly, "Amber doesn't really understand where I came from. She doesn't know about the diner, or the 3 jobs, or the roach-infested apartment we lived in when I was in elementary school. I've been trying to fit into her world, and it's been really hard. And having you here, being so visibly different, it makes it harder." The words hung in the air between us like poison. "Different," I repeated. Jason, I am different. I worked myself to the bone to give you a better life. I sacrificed everything so you could have opportunities I never had. And now you're ashamed of that? You're ashamed of me? I'm not ashamed, Mom. I'm just trying to build a new life here. Can't you understand that? I felt tears burning behind my eyes, but I refused to let them fall. I understand that you've forgotten where you came from. I understand that you're choosing people who judge you by your bank account over the person who loved you when you had nothing. He flinched. That's not fair. Fair? You want to talk about fair? I gave you everything, Jason. Everything I had, everything I was, I poured into you. And now you can't even look at me without wishing I was someone else. Mom, please don't make this dramatic. It's just one day, one wedding. Can you just try to understand my position here? I took a deep breath. I do understand. I understand perfectly. I turned to walk away and then stopped. I love you, Jason. I always will. But I hope someday you realize what you're giving up to impress people who will never really accept you anyway. I left the rehearsal dinner early, drove home through tears, and sat in my dark living room wondering how everything had gone so wrong. The next evening, the night before the wedding, Jason showed up at my door at 9 o'clock. He didn't call first, just appeared on my doorstep looking uncomfortable. "Can I come in?" he asked. I stepped aside and let him in. He paced around my living room, not sitting down, not looking at me. "Mom, I need to talk to you about tomorrow." My heart started pounding. I knew. Somehow, I already knew what was coming. "Amber and I have been talking," he said, still not meeting my eyes. "And with everything being so perfect and so carefully planned, and with her family being so particular about appearances and the photos and everything, we think it might be better if you didn't come to the wedding." The room spun. I actually had to sit down before my legs gave out. "What?" I whispered. "It's not that we don't want you there, Mom. It's just that Amber thinks. She's worried that that it could be embarrassing. For you, I mean. You'd be uncomfortable with all those people. In that fancy setting. We're just trying to save you from feeling out of place." "Embarrassing," I repeated, my voice hollow. "Your mother would be embarrassing at your wedding." "Mom, please don't make this harder than it already is. This is Amber's day. She's been planning this forever. Her parents have spent a fortune. Everything has to be perfect, and you're just not. You don't fit the aesthetic they're going for." I looked at my son, this man I'd raised, and I barely recognized him. Where was the little boy who used to make me Mother's Day cards out of construction paper? Where was the teenager who hugged me tight when I came home exhausted from working double shifts? Where was the young man who used to tell me I was his hero? "Get out," I said quietly. "Mom?" "Get out of my house, Jason, right now." "You're being unreasonable. I'm trying to explain. You just uninvited me to your wedding because I'm not fancy enough for your new family. You told me I would embarrass you. Your mother, who gave up everything for you, would embarrass you. There's nothing left to explain. Get out." He stood there for another moment, and I thought maybe he'd realize what he'd just done. Maybe he'd apologize, take it back, tell me he was sorry, and of course I should be there. Instead, he said, "Fine. If that's how you want to be about it, I'll call you after the honeymoon." Then he left. He actually left, walked out my door, got in his expensive car, and drove away. I didn't cry that night. I was beyond tears. I sat in my living room in the dark, staring at the photos on the wall. Jason as a baby. Jason on his first day of school. Jason at his high school graduation. Jason, Jason, Jason. My whole life had been about Jason. And now, Jason didn't want me at his wedding. The next day was Saturday, the wedding day. I woke up at dawn even though I hadn't really slept. I'd laid in bed all night, staring at the ceiling, replaying Jason's words over and over. "You'll embarrass us. You don't fit the aesthetic." I made coffee and sat at my kitchen table, listening to the clock tick. The wedding was at 3 o'clock. I imagined the venue being set up, Amber in her dressing room, Jason putting on his tuxedo. I imagined the empty space where I should have been. I wandered through the house, unable to settle. In Jason's old bedroom, I found a box of school projects, a Mother's Day card from 3rd grade that said, "My mom is my hero because she works hard and loves me and makes the best pancakes." I held that card and cried. At noon, I drove to the park where I used to take Jason when he was little. I sat on a bench under the old oak tree where we used to have picnics. I watched families playing, mothers pushing strollers, a little boy running to his mother after scraping his knee. I remember doing that for Jason 1,000 times, kissing skinned knees, wiping away tears, promising him everything would be okay. When had I stopped being the person he ran to? When had I become someone he ran from? My phone rang at 2:15. I looked at the screen and saw Amber's name. For a moment, I considered not answering. What could she possibly have to say to me? Was she calling to gloat? To make sure I was really staying away? But curiosity got the better of me. I answered, "Hello?" The sound that came through the phone was barely human. It was sobbing, gasping, the sound of someone completely falling apart. "Diane?" Amber's voice was choked, desperate. "Diane, please, I need you. I need you to tell me the truth." I stood up from the bench, my heart racing. "Amber, what's wrong? What happened?" "Is it true?" she sobbed. "Is everything he told me about you a lie?" My mind raced. "What did he tell you?" "He said you were negligent. He said you were an alcoholic who could barely take care of him. He said you brought different men home all the time, that you were more interested in your own life than in being a mother. He said you embarrassed him his whole childhood, that you showed up drunk to his high school graduation, that you stole money from him to pay for your drinking. He said you were toxic and unstable, and that's why he had to cut you off." I couldn't breathe. My son had told these lies? These horrible, vicious lies? "Amber," I said, my voice shaking, "none of that is true. Not one word." "I know," she said, and she started crying harder. "I know because Jason's college roommate is here. Daniel Martinez. He's Jason's groomsman, and he just told me everything. He told me the truth about you." Daniel. I remembered Daniel. He'd come home with Jason for Thanksgiving one year when he couldn't afford to fly home to Texas. I'd made him feel welcome, fed him, treated him like another son. He'd helped me clean up after dinner and told me I was one of the kindest people he'd ever met. "What did Daniel tell you?" I asked, though part of me didn't want to know. Didn't want to hear how the truth had finally come out. "He told me you raised Jason alone. He told me you worked 3 jobs to support him. He told me you went without so Jason could have everything he needed. He told me about how you'd send care packages to the dorm, how you'd call just to check on him, how you paid for his textbooks even when it meant you couldn't fix your broken-down car. He told me Jason used to brag about you, used to say you were the strongest person he knew." She was crying so hard she could barely speak. "And then Daniel said everything changed when Jason met me. He said Jason started lying about where he came from because he was ashamed of you. And I believed him, Diane. I believed every lie he told me because I was too shallow and too stupid to question it." "Amber." "There's more," she interrupted. "Daniel told me that Jason took out a loan in your name 2 years ago, a big loan. He said Jason forged your signature because he needed money to keep up appearances when he started dating me. He said you don't even know about it, that Jason's been hiding it from you." My blood ran cold. A loan in my name? Forged signature? "Daniel has proof," Amber continued. "He said he helped Jason with some paperwork one night when Jason was drunk, and Jason bragged about how easy it was to forge your signature. Daniel kept copies because he was worried about you, because he liked you and thought what Jason was doing was wrong. He's been carrying around this guilt for 2 years, and when he saw that you weren't at the rehearsal dinner, weren't mentioned in any of the speeches, he started asking questions. And Jason told him you weren't coming to the wedding because you were an embarrassment." She took a shuddering breath. "That's when Daniel told me everything, right here in the bridal suite, 30 minutes before I'm supposed to walk down the aisle. He said he couldn't watch me marry someone without knowing the truth about who Jason really is. And now I see it, Diane. I see exactly who I was about to marry." I sat back down on the bench, my legs shaking. "Amber, I don't know what to say. I'm calling off the wedding, she said firmly, her voice suddenly clear despite the tears. I can't marry him. I can't marry someone who would treat his own mother this way, who would lie to me about something so fundamental. If he could lie about you, what else has he lied about? What else will he lie about? Amber, are you sure? Your family, all those people, the money spent. I don't care, she said. None of that matters. What matters is that I almost married a man who's capable of this kind of cruelty, a man who would disown his own mother to impress people. What kind of husband would he be? What kind of father? I heard commotion in the background, voices, someone knocking on a door. I have to go, Amber said. I have to tell him it's over. But Diane, I need you to know that I'm sorry. I'm so sorry for believing his lies, for treating you badly, for being part of this. You deserved so much better. You deserve a son who's proud of you, who honors you, and I'm going to make sure everyone knows the truth about what happened here today. She hung up. I sat on that bench in shock for what felt like hours, but was probably only minutes. Then my phone rang again. This time it was Jason. Mom, he said, and his voice was panicked, desperate, nothing like the cold dismissal from the night before. Mom, you have to help me. Amber called off the wedding. She's telling everyone I'm a liar, that I treated you badly. Her father is threatening to sue me for fraud. Daniel showed her some paperwork I don't even remember. Mom, please, you have to come down here and tell them it's all a misunderstanding. Tell them we had a disagreement, but everything's fine. Please, Mom, please. I took a deep breath. No. What? No, Jason, I will not lie for you. I will not clean up this mess. Mom, please, my career is over if this gets out. Amber's father has connections. He could ruin me. I could lose my job. I need you. Please. You told that girl I was an alcoholic. You told her I neglected you. You told her I stole from you. You took out a loan in my name, Jason. You committed fraud using my identity. And you didn't want me at your wedding because I would embarrass you. I didn't mean any of it. I was just trying to fit in with her family. I was stupid, okay? I made a mistake. But you're my mother. You have to forgive me. That's what mothers do. Something inside me hardened. Mothers also protect themselves, Jason. Mothers also have dignity. Mothers also deserve to be treated with respect. And this mother is done letting you use her. Fine, he spat. And there was the real Jason. The one I'd been afraid to see. Fine. You want to abandon me on what should be the best day of my life? Go ahead. See if I ever speak to you again. Jason, I said calmly, you abandoned me first. Last night, when you told me not to come to your wedding. You made your choice. Now live with it. I hung up. The next few days were a blur. Daniel called me and explained everything in detail. The loan Jason had taken out in my name was for $50,000. He'd used it to buy an expensive engagement ring, to fund lavish dates with Amber, to lease a nicer car. He'd been making the payments from his own account, which was probably why I hadn't noticed, but legally, I was responsible for the debt. Daniel had copies of everything. Documents Jason had left lying around their apartment, emails Jason had written when he was drunk and careless. Enough evidence to prove fraud. Enough evidence to press charges if I wanted to. I met with a lawyer, a good one, recommended by Daniel's father, who was an attorney in Texas. The lawyer reviewed everything and told me I had a solid case. We could get the loan discharged, maybe even get Jason charged with fraud if I wanted to pursue it criminally. I didn't want to send my son to jail. Despite everything, despite the lies and the betrayal and the cruelty, I didn't want that. But I did want the debt cleared, and I did want him to face consequences. We settled it quietly. Jason had to pay back every penny of the loan himself. His name was flagged on my credit report, ensuring he could never use my identity again. And I made him sign a document acknowledging what he'd done, witnessed, and notarized, insurance against him ever trying to spin the story differently. Amber reached out to me a week after the canceled wedding. She wanted to apologize in person. We met at a coffee shop, and she looked different than I remembered. Humbler. More real. I've been thinking a lot about what happened, she said. About the kind of person I was, the kind of values I had. My parents raised me to care about money and status and appearances, and I never questioned it. I never thought about what really mattered. She wrapped her hands around her coffee cup. Jason and I were perfect for each other, but not in a good way. We were both shallow, both more concerned with looking successful than being good people. What he did to you opened my eyes to who I was becoming. "What will you do now?" I asked. "I'm moving out of my parents' house. I'm going back to school to finish my degree. I'm going to figure out who I am when I'm not trying to impress everyone around me." She smiled, a real smile this time. "And I'm going to make sure that when I do find someone to share my life with, there's someone who treats their mother the way you deserve to be treated." We talked for 2 hours that day. By the end, I realized that maybe the canceled wedding had saved 2 people, not just one. As for Jason, I haven't spoken to him since that phone call on his wedding day. He's tried to reach out a few times, texts that start with "I'm sorry," but quickly devolve into excuses and justifications. I don't respond. Maybe someday he'll understand what he lost. Maybe someday he'll genuinely change, but I'm not holding my breath, and I'm not waiting around to find out. I thought being uninvited to my son's wedding was the worst thing that could happen to me, but I was wrong. The worst thing would have been watching him marry someone while continuing to believe his lies about me, continuing to be erased from his life, continuing to accept crumbs of affection from someone who should have treasured me. The wedding being called off was the best thing that could have happened. The truth came out. I got justice, and I got my dignity back. That's all I needed.